Class. We had to stop thinking that Black people are this monolithic group that, we have one story, one narrative, one outcome. We knew people in all industries. We knew pro athletes, guys who went to high school with us, but we also knew, like I said, doctors, lawyers. We also had school teachers, brothers that were in the classroom. Mr. Parker, shout out to the guys at Deep Creek. We had I'm going to use this, I'm going to flip this. We came from a place called Camelot, a land of kings and queens. That's where we grew up. We grew up in a place of roughly 1,000 households of working class, middle class, and some even upward middle class Black families.
History on that,
right?
Camelot wasn't meant for us. We took Camelot over.
So the two sides of one coin. Let's break it down. Let's chop it up, as you like to say. Let's break it down. So there are two sides of the coin of America that change the complexion and sometimes the wealth and health outcomes of our society. This is what I came to Emory University as an emergency physician to kind of integrate into health. It is colonization. It is then settlement. It is then, from that point on, segregation,
right?
Integration. Then you have this phenomenon called blockbusting, redlining, white flight. All of those things speak to the physical narratives of geography that have happened in America in the last 400 years. Each one of those phenomena cannot live without the other. They're not all healthy. They're not all whole. Our neighborhood was one of those things. It was a suburb of Norfolk, Virginia. Chesapeake eventually became its own city. 757 stand up,
That's
2 up, 2
right.
down.
2 up, 2 down.
But it was still plagued with some of the history of this neighborhood is for this group of people, this neighborhood is for this group of people. That's how the country was settled. We moved people out and took the desirable lands. And eventually, because of merit, because of conscience, because of policy, we allowed other people who often weren't desired or displaced to move back in. But that did not prevent those other counter mechanisms or those reactions such as white flight. So we grew up in a neighborhood during a time where integration was hot. That was a new thing. They're moving us back in. They're allowing us to have opportunities to buy homes in areas that were primarily excluded from us. What happened from that point on, there was an egress of a certain group of people. And we filled the spaces. Nature abhors a vacuum. So whenever something leaves, something comes in. Whenever someone leaves, we fill that space. The greatness about that is that we lived in a place that was very much influenced by the military. And the military had already set a standard for integration into the masses for a multicultural diaspora. That's what the United States military did, for good or for bad. It brought people in, took over lands, and allowed those people to come in and be a part of that country. And Hampton Roads looked like that. So our neighborhood was actually just a symptom or a byproduct of all those mechanisms happening at the same time. Some of it was for the bad, and my story, it was for the good. It worked out good for us.
I didn't like when people say, I grew up in the hood. Well, that means a totally different thing for us.
It does.
Because our hood wasn't what you see in minister society.
Right.
Our hood was, we all grew up in single family homes. And one of the great things about, I can't speak to how Camelot is now, but our community was so deep where, we could roam the neighborhood and we could have those adventures because you knew, my mom knew if I was on your side of Camelot, your mom was look out for me and vice versa.
Right.
I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do. I think we're the last of that type of generation where by the time I got home, it got home before I did.
Right. You had a hot plate of Ackright waiting for you.
Like,
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
If you, because your mom will snatch me up too.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, and that was a golden era. And just not to wax nostalgic, but it was a golden era where there was accountability in community, right? And I have this saying when I do some of my my public talks that community is cost effective. You don't have to worry about babysitters. You don't have to worry about childcare. You don't have to worry about daycare. All those things are interwoven in a tight community. You don't have to outsource or spend those things. And we benefited from that. When you came and spent the day at my crib and we're playing games or we riding bikes and stuff, nobody was paying anybody to watch somebody, right?
Right.
And we took that little bike mission to someplace else. Nobody was paying anybody to watch. And yet there was this...
Shout out to Devil's Mountain.
Yeah, Devil's Mountain behind Camelot. Yeah, behind the elementary school. Nobody was watching us, but there was an accountability. And there were a row of homes back there. People would see, they're like, oh yeah, that's Sean and John, or that was Walson and whoever. Everybody knew everybody's kids. And there was a richness in that you couldn't pay for even if you had to put a dollar sign on.
Yeah. And
so it's cost effective.
My kids are very jealous of our childhood because, I still rock with people that were in kindergarten with me.
I believe it.
And that's kind of how our neighborhood was. Like, we had a school. It was Camelot Elementary School. Everybody went there. But we also were one of the last generations where the teachers that taught in our school lived in the neighborhood. And that made a real big difference. And we all came up and, yes, we're in a military transit town where people came and people go. But for the most part, out of the 25 kids in my kindergarten class, I still rock with 10 of them at least.
Right. So shout out to Mr. Deborah. Black science teacher, well ahead of his time. Shout out to Miss Connors. Yep. Shout out to Miss
Valentine just passed.
Oh no! Rest in peace to Valerie Valentine. It is a.
Hold on, we forgetting the kindergarten teacher, Miss Norfolk.
Oh, Miss Norfolk, yes.
Yeah, all these teachers lived in the neighborhood.
Absolutely,
Miss
Walden.
Miss Walden. My mama and Miss Walden. They still bringing up stuff I did back in the day.
Yeah, Tony and I were in band, till we finished. It is. And for the people who are like, what are they talking about? We're talking about people in your neighborhood. And I'm going to spin off. There's a series coming out of my podcast I'm going to want to link to. Don't you know your hood? And it is important to recognize the pillars of your community and to spend time listening to their stories because they help us evolve as a larger community. They help us learn from their victories and as well as their defeats. And these are people in our community who did that for us. There were people who taught us lessons of life beyond just the textbook. So we're shouting out this Hall of Fame. That's what we're doing. We're running the roll call.
Right. And these are people who made me and you be who we were. Right. If it weren't for these people, they may not be a Dr. John Lewis.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.